Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al-Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
I think Trump genuinely likes Shara and is unconcerned, perhaps even impressed by what Trump referred to yesterday as Shara's, quote, rough past. For Trump and his team, Shara is seen as someone who can be a constructive partner on a range of regional issues, including counterterrorism. Trump also views the leadership change in Damascus as a chance to pull Syria out of Iran's orbit and into a more pro-Western regional order. And then finally, Trump is very eager to expand the Abraham Accords.
Welcome back to the Al-Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa met with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House on Monday, making the former al-Qaeda member the first Syrian head of state to visit the Oval Office. The two discussed the pending integration of the U.S.-backed and Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces into the new Syrian army and a potential security deal between Syria and Israel, according to a Syrian Foreign Ministry readout. A Trump administration official also said that Syria is joining the U.S.-led coalition to fight ISIS. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan made a surprise appearance at the meeting and said he joined Trump and Shara for part of the talks. Earlier, Shara met a number of congresspeople, including House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Brian Mast. The Republican military veteran has been one of the main obstacles to a congressional repeal of the Caesar Act sanctions, which were designed to punish the former regime of Bashar al-Assad. Recent indications are that a repeal would come through the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, which sets the budget for defense-related activity. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio issued another 180-day waiver for the Caesar sanctions on Monday, replacing the one issued in May. Shara gave an interview to Fox News on Monday evening, during which he ruled out any direct talks with Israel on a full normalization agreement, which is a key goal of the Trump administration, but voiced openness to American diplomacy on the issue, as well as continuing the U.S. military presence in Syria. In this episode, we'll hear from Al-Monitor's State Department correspondent, Elizabeth Hagedorn. Elizabeth takes us through what conditions Congress might place on Syria in exchange for a Caesar Act repeal, what an Israel security deal might look like, short of full normalization, and why Trump is so keen on developing relations with Shara, despite opposition from some in the American leader's orbit. Hope you enjoy. Elizabeth, welcome back to the Al-Monitor Brief.
Hi, Adam.
So obviously this is a very historic visit by Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa in the White House. What stood out to you the most from his trip to the White House and to Washington?
Well, as you mentioned, Adam, the historic nature of it, as I'm sure many of our listeners know, this was the first time a Syrian leader has ever set foot in the White House since Syria's independence nearly 80 years ago. Equally striking was the remarkable transformation of Ahmed al-Sharaa himself. This time a year ago, Shara was a rebel leader commanding forces in Idlib. Yesterday, he was a recognized head of state, welcomed by the U.S. president at the White House. So quite a turnaround. And in listening to Trump's comments after the meeting, he really minimized Shara's former affiliation with al-Qaeda and instead pointed to his leadership qualities during what is a crucial moment in Syria's history. And I think that really reflects Trump's calculation that supporting the leading power broker in post-Assad Syria, regardless of his past, serves U.S. interests better than does continued isolation of this government.
We'll get back to Trump's view of the whole thing, but I want to first touch on some of your reporting on what's going on in Congress. You reported that some people in the body want modifications to the language used in the Caesar Act repeal that's floating around. How much progress has been made in getting Congress to go along with a Caesar sanctions repeal? And what do some of the skeptics of that action want to see happen first?
Well, this was a big issue hanging over the Shara visit, and the White House had hoped that it would be finalized before he arrived. The White House had been lobbying lawmakers hard in recent weeks to include a repeal of the Caesar Act in its year-end defense legislation known as the NDAA. And the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Jim Risch, the committee's ranking Democrat, Jeanne Shaheen, both support repealing Caesar and the NDAA, as does the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Gregory Meeks. But the committee's Republican chairman, Brian Mast, whose support is needed, has been a holdout. Mast is a veteran who lost both of his legs serving in Afghanistan, and he has serious reservations about lifting sanctions on a country whose leader was, once aligned with al-Qaeda. Now, interestingly, Mast met with Sharaa on Sunday, and while there's no indication that he's had a complete change of heart, sources who were present at the meeting described it to me as a constructive and, pleasant exchange of views between the two men. And as of this recording, I'm told that, Mast is seeking to attach conditions or perhaps modifications of some kind to this Caesar Act repeal language that would address some of his concerns.
And as a quick follow-up, do you have any idea about what conditions some of the Congress members want to place on any Caesar Act repeal? Conditions on the Syrian government, I mean?
Well, negotiators are staying tight-lipped about the language surrounding the Caesar Act repeal in this final compromise bill that they're working on. But if the Senate passed NDAA version is any indication, there was an amendment from Senator Lindsey Graham, a close ally of the president, that required Trump to certify every 6 months that the Syrian government has met certain conditions, including refraining from military action against Israel and taking steps to expel foreign fighters. It's possible that Congressman Mast is seeking similar conditions in his efforts to find language that he can endorse.
And going back to the president, there's been opposition from some people in Trump's orbit to this outreach he's done with Sharaa. You mentioned in your report last night, Laura Loomer's criticism of the meeting. Why do you think the president is so keen on establishing working relations with Sharaa?
I think Trump genuinely likes Sharaa and is unconcerned, perhaps even impressed by what Trump referred to yesterday as Sharaa's, quote, rough past. For Trump and his team, Sharaa is seen as someone who can be a constructive partner on a range of regional issues, including counterterrorism. Unlike Sharaa's predecessor, Bashar al-Assad, with whom the U.S. had no relationship and who, of course, did not distinguish between combating terrorists and repressing his domestic opposition. Trump also views the leadership change in Damascus as a chance to pull Syria out of Iran's orbit and into a more pro-Western regional order. And then finally, Trump is very eager to expand the Abraham Accords, right? And even as Sharaa in his Fox News interview yesterday ruled out normalization with Israel in the near future, the Trump administration is working to facilitate a lesser de-escalation agreement between the two countries. And if successful, Trump can add that to the list of conflicts he says his administration has helped to mediate.
And finally, what obstacles remain in normalizing U.S.-Syria relations? Are there any lingering concerns in the administration or any possible limits to Trump's overtures?
Well, there are, of course, concerns both within the administration and within Congress about the Syrian government's ability to provide accountability for the violence that occurred against the Druze and Alawite communities earlier this year. And there are also concerns for Sharaa's own safety, that his engagement with the West could make him a target for assassination. Assuming the Caesar repeal efforts are successful, one of the challenges ahead will be repealing Syria's banking sector following years of neglect and isolation from the global financial system. I know that's a priority for the U.S. Treasury Department, as is lifting the U.S. designation on Syria as a state sponsor of terrorism, which I'm told will happen in early 2026.
Elizabeth, thanks a lot for your time, and we look forward to more of your reporting from Washington.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Be sure to follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East. Until next time, I'm Adam Lucente.